Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect focused on management technologies. Today's discussion will be part 4 of a continuing series talking about groups as they are used by Intune, but as we've talked about in the series, while the groups are used by Intune, this is really not a series focused solely on Intune since groups are part of Intra ID. Right, so today's session will be focused specifically on nested groups and their use, and of course how they can be used in Intune. Here's the agenda, right? What are nested groups? Why do we care about them? I'll talk about some requirements and limitations, show some scenarios, and show you in the lab some specific demos of what I have set up, how you create them, etc. We'll wrap it up from there. So what are intra-ID nested groups? Well, I try to graphically show, what I'm going to show in the lab. Basically, groups that are added to other groups, right? Groups within groups. And so in the first scenario, we might have group B that's being added to group A. Second scenario, we'd have group D, E, and F that are all being added to group C. Third scenario, we would have a group I that's added, J that's added to I, and then group I is added to H, and then group H is added to G, right? And so we'll, that's just a couple of sample scenarios. We have as we get into this further, I'll show you a PowerShell script that's able to check, if you will, and validate the group membership accordingly when we have nested, right? Other thing. So nested groups really, it can apply differently in different scenarios. So with dynamic groups, you can have groups that have assigned membership that you can work with dynamic groups. You can have some scenarios where groups being added as nested groups aren't supported. You can see some of that in the UI, right? But we'll get into that. Also, security groups. So there are two different types of intra-ID groups, two big, broad umbrella types of intra-ID groups. In Intune, the one that we work with exclusively is security groups, right? There is a class of groups called M365 groups. For nesting, you're only going to be able to do that with security groups, right? M365 groups, at least according to when this is being recorded, are not supported for nesting. Could be in the future, currently are not. And then lastly, nesting can be done with user or device groups, but you can't combine users and devices into the same group, right? Can't do that within a group, can't do that when nesting in groups, right? So user or device groups, not both at the same time. So why do we care about intra-ID nested groups? Well, it's just another level of being able to organize the way that you want to, being able to optimize, having flexibility to include groups where they make sense, right? To achieve ultimately your goal. Do you have to use nested groups? Nope. Can using nested groups add some complexity in some cases? Sure it can, right? But it is a very useful tool that you can use according to your needs. Okay, so what are the requirements of using intra-ID nested groups? Well, put simply, you just need the right permissions to be able to do it. You need a supported role. You need to have a supported role, either group admin or user admin, depending on what you're wanting to do. Okay, so there are some limitations of intra-ID groups, right? Things that you can't do. For example, I'll just throw all these out there. For example, you cannot add a security group into a group that's synchronized from on-prem Active Directory. So through Azure AD Connect, you do have the ability to, whatever it's called these days, it's going to always probably be Azure AD Connect to me. Through that process, you do have the ability to take groups from on-prem AD and replicate them up to Azure AD. You cannot nest groups that originated from on-prem Active Directory and nest security groups within, right? It has to be pure Azure AD only. You also cannot take security groups and nest them within an M365 group. That's not supported, at least today. You cannot take an M365 group and nest that within another M365 group or a security group. So same thing, M365 group nesting not supported as of today. And then also you cannot take a security group and assign membership to shared resources and apps in this way, right? You can't take licenses and apply them to nested security groups. You can't take distribution groups and apply them to nested security groups. You can't take security groups and apply them to mail-enabled security groups. And finally, you cannot take security groups and add them to role-enabled groups. So there are some limitations for sure. But that said, there are also some pretty significant benefits in some cases and ability to do this where it makes sense for you. So you do see these limitations. Don't let that make you think it's not worth understanding nested security groups, because it is. And you could find it very useful in certain scenarios for you, right? Okay, so supported scenarios. We can definitely use nested groups for single group nesting, right? One group can be added to the member as another group. It's pretty basic stuff. You can add, or we support nested security groups for claims kind of scenarios. So when an app is configured to receive group membership claims in the token, nested groups can be used there, in which the signed in user is a member of that group. We can also use nested security groups for conditional access. So when the conditional access policy has a particular group in scope, if that group is nested, that's very supportable, very fine. So password reset. So if you want to restrict access to self-service password reset and you have a nested group where you want to do that, no problem. We fully support that. And then also for intra-join registration, restricting which users can do your Microsoft intra-join and device registration is fully possible with nested group scenarios. All right, so all of that to say what nested groups are, kind of set the parameters, if you will. But seeing this is a lot more fun and hopefully can make this a little bit more clear. So let's turn to the lab and take a look. So I'll show you first. Let me pull the lab. Let me grab that for a second. So I'll show you first, let me get back to the home page, how you would go about creating a nested group. And then I'll show you some things that I've put together kind of for demo. So I'll start by going to groups here. All right, let Intune catch up for just a second. There we go. Hang on. All right, so now that I'm in groups, I'm just going to pick a group. It doesn't really matter which one, and show how you would add the group as a nested member, right? So what you would do is you would find the group that you want to become a member of another group. Or said another way, you find the group that you want to nest within another group, and you go to that group, and then you go to group memberships right here, right? And then you're not going to see any, well, in my case, you're not going to see any. You may, right? If this group is a member of another group, then you'll see it here. And then you can select to add memberships, right? Then you want to locate the group you want to make this group a member of. And notice, right, you can see the groups listed here, and you can also see whether or not you are allowed to add to that group. They'll be gray if you're not able to. Right here, I can absolutely add to this, so I can select it. So we'll keep you within the parameters just by showing you what groups you can choose to add to or not. So you see a bunch of groups here. So I just chose one. I can add to it, no problem. So good to go. So I'll select that. And then now do a refresh, and this group will soon, in a moment, be a member of this other group, right? So I don't really care to keep that, so I will remove that membership. But that's how you do it. You go to the group that you want to nest within another group, and then you add the membership accordingly, and we're good from there, right? Okay, so let's see. Now, I do want to show you, let me pull the lab back in, sorry. I do want to show you what I've set up in my nested scenario. So you saw it maybe in the console a moment ago. I showed it to you in the graphic at the beginning, showing you a couple of different ways you could do some things. So group A will be, so the first scenario is I'm going to add group B into group A. And so if I look at group B, right, I can go in and I will see that it is a member of group A. So it's part of group A, right? So this is group B is nested within group A. That's pretty straightforward. Group A is an assigned membership type. So I'm just keeping it simple. Most of my groups are, for simplicity, assigned memberships, but I already showed you how in the UI it will help guide you what groups you can add to other groups, right? So you can do some dynamic groups and so on. So that's the scenario I did here. Then I also did a scenario where groups D, E, and F are added as part of group C. So here, for example, is group D, and I've added it as a member of group C, right? And I could do that for E and F, and they would all be members of group C. Let's see, if I look, well, let's just do it, right? Let's go to, so C, so that's D. Then if I look at E, you'll see that E also is a member of group C. Sorry, I know this can get a little bit tedious, but I just want to do it. And then F, right? So we can't, my point in kind of belaboring this is that we can actually use the UI to validate our group memberships, right? So I do see that they're all part of C. So if I then go to C, if I go to group C, here, all groups, group C, and then I look at the membership of group C, right? Come on. Why am I not doing that? Weird. Well, let me just go back into group C. Okay, much better. And look at members. Then I will see that group D, E, and F are all three members. So visually, I can validate my nesting right here. So if I would have shown this in my first example where I was putting group B in A and came in here, that I could see, in fact, that in group A, I have group B listed as a member, right? So I can validate that. Now, to my last example, where I have group G as the parent, basically I'm going to add group I into J into I, and then I into H, and then H into G. So it's basically a three-level of nesting. So I'm just going to go directly to group G. And group G is the ultimate source of my multi-level nesting. If I look at members, then you'll see that I have group H. And then if I go to group H, you'll see that I have group I And then if I go to group I, you'll see that I have group J, right? And that's where I stop. But you can't just go to the UI and see that you have this multi-level of nesting that you're building into the group. So what you can do, though, is you can take it out of the UI and you can go into PowerShell and you can validate your nesting there. Let me show you. Okay, I paused the recording so I could go ahead and get PowerShell all set up and show it to you. So basically, here's my ISE, here's my PowerShell script. And by the way, this is just a little interesting factoid, right? So I've started using ChatGPT a little bit to do some cool things. And I thought, well, let's just see what I can do with ChatGPT here. And I went and asked ChatGPT, can you give me a PowerShell script that will let me validate group membership nesting? And it spit this PowerShell script out. So I didn't write this, ChatGPT did, which is really cool, right? So if you need a demo script, it may be something worth trying, right? So basically, I'm going to run this, and I'm going to add in the group ID that I care about. So here's the main script. Here's where I'm putting my root group ID. So I can start with A, right? You'll see that I've got the last one in there, but I can start with A. That's where I add group B into group A, right? And I'll just run that. I don't know what happened. What did I do here? What did I do? Well, let's see if it'll run. Yeah, it doesn't like that. What did I do? I messed something up. Now, give me a second. I will fix that and see what I messed up and come back and go from there. Still not sure what I did, but it looks like I have it right now. So let's see if it will run this time. Okay, good. So it did. So I'm going to have to go through and validate. I was hoping to avoid that the second time, but let's see. Looks like it went through. That's good, right? And so what happens is the PowerShell script runs, and it will show you the membership of Group A, right? This group ID is for Group A, and you'll see my two members, and then here is my nested group. So it spits it out directly for you. So you see that Group B is part of Group A, which is really cool, right? And then you can do that in the UI too, no problem. But the script will show it to you just by ID. So let's go ahead and replace this. And this is the ID for Group C. I know what I did wrong there. Undo. That's the ID for Group C. And so Group D, E, and F should be listed as members there. So let's go do that. And it will ask me again. I've already validated, so we should be good. And in fact, we see that for this group ID, Group D, E, and F are members. So we can do that. Again, you can do that in the UI. But for the last example, where I have group, Group C, D, E, F, G, right? So J is kind of a multi-tiered group nesting where J is an I, and I is an H, and H is an G, whatever. You can't so much do that from the UI cleanly. So if you go through PowerShell, though, you can. So let's go replace this. So this should be the group ID of Group G, if I'm saying that correctly. And so I'll go do this again, validate, run this through, and I should be able to see now all of the membership. So I can see, here's my Group G, and it's saying that Group H, I, and J are members, right? They are not direct members of G, though. They're only members by inheritance. So H is part of G directly, I is part of H directly, J is part of I directly. All three are part of G, though, because of the nesting, if that makes sense, right? So pretty cool way to go through and validate things are as they should be, right? So anyway, cool stuff. wrapping things up in terms of, so not a hard demo to do, right? Very important demo to do, very useful thing to be able to take a look at. Starting to wrap some things up, just wanted to mention a couple of things. So standalone versus nesting groups. Certainly standalone is easier to follow if you're trying to make sure that everything is as direct as possible. Standalone groups are the best way to go. Nesting does add complexity. If it's one level of nesting, it's not that big a deal. If it's multiple groups going into one level of multiple groups going into one group, that's not such a big deal as far as complexity. If you have that multi-level of nested groups, that can start to add complexity for sure, right? The PowerShell script will help keep things straight. So just know that with everything you do that adds complexity, it just makes things a little bit more difficult to troubleshoot sometimes, right? In terms of how to be effective using nested groups, right? Just as reminders, right? Can we nest user and device groups together? No, can't be done, right? You can't put users and devices in the same group, and so you can't nest users and device groups together. So you absolutely can assign groups to dynamic groups, right? There you see already from the discussion, there's certain scenarios that we don't support. The UI is awesome to help you dissect that if you want to add one group to another, and the UI says that you can't do it. You just know that that's not possible, so it'll help keep you within the boundaries. And showing you the PowerShell script, the purpose of doing that was just to show you that programmatic options can be very useful. You can absolutely act upon groups, nested groups, whatever, programmatically, if you need to get that done. And I thought the reference to ChatGPT was pretty cool. So we're not going to belabor any more than that because I just wanted to show you the concept. We'll wrap the session here, and we will see you next time.